similar starting points, but just went in like weird tangents. I just remember like being on tour, and being at a store, and just looking at like.
Okay, cool. So I guess let's start with you want to introduce yourself.
Sure.
And
just with my name.
Yeah, just introduce yourself, and then you could maybe just go from that to like how you met those guys.
All right. My name is Ruben Lorchmiller, and how did I meet those guys? I lived in Olympia, and it's a small enough town, and it didn't take long to meet people.
Okay, wait.
Is that what you mean?
I forgot. This is totally my fault. I forgot to say something. So, when I ask you a question, you should try to answer by incorporating the information, because I'm not going to be in it at all.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to edit myself out. So, like,
right.
So when I say, like, when
how
you
did
graduate from high school, I graduated from high school in...
All right, I got you.
Yeah. And that way we'll be clean and free to edit like madmen.
All right. Let me just think about this. How did I meet them? I don't know. How did I meet them? Let's see. I met them just by going to shows and meeting them and going to parties and seeing their band and knowing other people and just living in a small town. That's makes it easy enough to meet people. I think I saw them play before I had met them, and saw them play and was just totally blown away and thought it was pretty amazing, and then just sort of met them eventually in kind of a natural way. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's hard to remember the details.
Do you remember like the first shows, or is there any shows that stand out, or anything you thought about the music? You could even say the name of the band too, like I Met Carp.
Or their names.
Or their names.
Yeah. No, I met, let's see. I'm sorry it's going to be so awkward and weird. You'll edit it all together. I'm just like, what?
We just gotta get...
Yeah, I gotta get warmed up. Let's see. What now? What?
So you met Carp.
I saw Carp play before I met them. The first time I saw them was in a basement show at a house in Olympia, and it was totally amazing. I mean, they just sort of destroyed everything. It was great. Lots of high energy and just kind of chaos, and I was just really amazed by it. And that was pretty memorable. Kind of the first one was pretty memorable. And then I would see them play every now and then. I think that the first time I actually really met any of them was I met Jared, and they had played on the radio at, that thing, that noise is over.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's the garage door.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, the first time I met any of those guys, was I met Jared at the radio station at Evergreen, and they had played a show, like the radio show, and that a friend of mine had a radio show after the radio show that they played on, and so when I got there, they had already played. They played live on the radio. They had already played. I didn't see them then, but then Jared and I were just hanging out, like listening to records that they had in the radio station's collection, and just playing them and talking about records and stuff. It was real nice.
Were you going to school there? Or you were just...
Yeah, I did go to school there. Yeah. Yes, I went to school at Evergreen State College. That's how I'm supposed to say it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to get used to.
Yeah. Do you want to close the windows?
The windows?
It makes a difference.
It does.
Yeah. That one's fucked up. Careful. Don't do that one. You're gonna hurt yourself. No, really. I'm sorry. This thing is not attached.
Because you're a post-it freak.
I just remember it being like seeing them and just being kind of amazed by it, just the level of like intensity and the level of energy, and then meeting them, just they were really nice people. They were just really friendly.
Was it similar? Was it similar to other bands that you were seeing at the time, or I mean, how do you think it related, as far as what you saw them doing, how it related to what else was going on at the time that you were exposed to?
Well, there was. It seemed like with a few different bands, maybe there was this sort of healthy competition to see who could be as loud as possible. You know, it seemed like there was a band, Godhead Silo, and they seemed like they had sort of a friendly rivalry in a way of like who could be the loudest band in Olympia or something like that. I mean, it was really like things kind of existed. I mean, in hindsight, it seemed like this really sort of very insular and very small thing that like the loudest band in Olympia. Like, who cares? It's like, you know, it's sort of tiny if you think about it. But at the time, it was so sort of like, I don't know, all-encompassing in a way that it didn't really matter that it was only within these small confines of a small town and like just a small amount of people in this town. It seemed a lot bigger than that at the time or something like that. So that was one thing, just sheer volume, I think. You know, was sort of like potentially a driving force behind something. I mean, and also there was sort of like the foundation of Melvin's sort of underwriting all that stuff that really provided like this dose of heaviness and this dose of volume, and then like also this creepiness, like trying to kind of being creeps in a way, but like funny creeps, you know, that was sort of like a definite thing that was happening that people were interested in, you know, and so that kind of relates to all that. I mean, it fits within their own version of kind of being exposed to those things and growing up around those things.
Yeah,
you know.
definitely. I always thought it was interesting too, is because basically it's kind of the way I saw it at the time was like, you know, you got the Melvins or whatever, and they definitely established kind of like a Northwest loud trio type sound, and then you had these other bands into which I kind of like to include Hammerhead as well, you know, and stuff. But then you have these other bands like doing it their way, or like expanding on it and stuff. And I remember the first thing I heard about Carp was they were like, oh, somebody was like, oh, it's like Melvin's on crack, or something like that, which appealed to me personally a lot more, than, you know, for me personally.
Well, there was always this comparison that I didn't really get completely. People would really kind of put them in like being like just like Melvin's or something like that, and I didn't really think that was always true. There was this whole other like side to it that was more like even more freaked out, like you said, like on crack or something like that. I mean, there were other influences that were, I mean, I don't know, I can't really speak to it from their perspective. I can only assume certain things, but there were, I don't know exactly what they are, but I don't know. They kind of were, I mean, they were more spazzes than that, you know? Like, I don't really think of Melvin's as being spazzes, you know? There's kind of like, Melvin's kind of have this, a little bit of a cold distance maybe or something like that, or where like Carp just more of like freaked out, you know? And that's what gave it like a different energy. It was kind of more youthful or something. I don't know necessarily if that's true or not, but that's how I felt. I mean, there was also just this sort of regionalism that was happening, not intentionally, but just the condition of living in that area made sense that there'd be lots of bands happening at all. You know, it's just a lot of time to spend indoors. And it rains a lot, and all winter's cold. So there was these, you know, so there's these sort of musical influence of like other people being in bands, and then you have all this sort of potential time on your hands, you know, and so it kind of made sense. People weren't out surfing or anything like that, you know.
Right, and you have basements.
Yeah, I mean basements and like crappy houses that are cheap. So kids could get houses and live together and rehearse in basements, practice in basements. But Carp practiced out at Jared's mom's house in this weird little shack, which I think like had a lot to do with it too, you know. It was this weird, like fucked up tool shed out in the back. So it's like, I mean, it's like a weird horror movie or something like that, like a set for a horror movie, which makes sense in like a lot of things they were making music about and stuff like that. It was a weird place. So, and that was like even way more out in the woods and way out in the country. So just, it's like doubled the isolation or something like that.
Yeah, I think I've thought about this so much, especially ending about here, like the positive correlation between like volume and distance from your neighbors.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because it gives you the opportunity to, you know, to create those kind of volumes, but at the same time, it also the isolation from other and the distance from other people, both like, you know, within your region and then from your region to the rest of the world,
Yeah.
gives you like a need to be loud,
Yeah.
to try to reach them.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's
Potentially.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and there was no one that's going to tell you to turn it down or anything like that, because there's no one around really, you know. I mean, they play shows, parties would get shut down and stuff like that, but if you're practicing out in a shed out at your mom's house, outside of Olympia, out in the woods or something like that, you can kind of do whatever you want, you know. And that was potentially part of it. There wasn't. I mean, there were influences, sort of historical and musical influences, but it was kind of just being, what was happening there seemed like a lot of it was just being invented right down on the spot to a large degree. I mean, it was a mix of a lot of different things. But it wasn't like just repeating a pattern or something like that. It seemed pretty new. Maybe not.
Anyway.
To me, at least. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, no.
Well, and what was your feeling? We kind of talking about this a little bit before, but what was your feeling too about like how you have kind of like you're saying like it's very insular and you have the small town aspect, but at the same time you have the labels that were there and the stuff. There is a dialogue. The music is going out.
Yeah.
Of the of the area, and it is being communicated to the rest of the country, and then you also have the relationship that becomes national with the overflow from the grunge crap.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really know if I know the question. You're just wondering like what, how did it relate to the outside world?
Well, I kind of just kind of some of what we were talking about there before when you were talking about like just that time.
That comes sort of like, that feels like that's like a few years later.
Oh, okay.
Because there's like stuff that was happening in the time, like, that's sort of when like it started getting like kind of sour or something.
Oh, okay.
There was a lot of things that kind of happened
Alright,
before,
so
like,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I guess, so I became friends with them and just hanging out and like just goofing around, and I mean, didn't really do anything specific other than just sort of hang out and go to shows and just, I don't know, hang out at each other's houses and stuff like that. It wasn't like you really did anything specific. But I guess what I'm thinking about getting to in terms of talking about stuff is like, and in relationship to going out into the outside world, is that I went on tour with them twice, you know, and it was with the first tour was, I don't know the dates of anything, I can't remember the dates exactly of anything, but like, I think it was their first national tour. I mean, I know that they went on tour with Beck for a little bit at some point, and I think that was maybe before I went on tour with them, but it wasn't, I don't know if that was really for a long time, or I don't know really what that was about. But the first one was just with the Mustaches Wild record, and then, oh yeah, and I had taken, I'm just trying to think of all the like things, like points of interest. I took pictures of them for those records, for the Mustaches Wild record, and then for she has it right here. This one, this first record, I took this picture right here. That's sort of how I got to know them better, is like I think I got to be friends with Chris first. I'm trying to remember the order of things. Like, got to be friends with Chris first. We just had some friends in common, and he was living with someone that was a friend of mine, and so just by like being around in a small town, you just get to know people. And I was taking pictures. I'd been taking pictures and stuff, and I I guess he asked me to do it, to take pictures of them for this record. And so we went up to this is like the top, this weird laundry room on the top of an apartment building where a bunch of people lived. I think Chris was living there at the time. And we took these pictures, and then they ended up putting them on this record. So that was kind of the first, like, how I met Scott and Jared, like, in a more, like, spending a little bit of time with them. And then they were going to go on tour for this record, and then at some point, I don't even know how it happened, but they asked me if I wanted to go with them and just roadie for them, basically. And so we did that. It was like a 6-week tour. And kind of the thing that's like the funniest thing to me about it is I was about maybe 2 years older than them. So I was 22 and they were 19. So we're just like on tour for 6 months or 6 weeks around the United States. And like I was the only one that could buy beer. And so I would get them drinks and stuff like that. It's just kind of ridiculous to think about. And then I went on tour with them again for the, I think they went on tour one more time, and then like the third national tour I went with them. And there was like, I kind of divided up of like the good tour and the bad tour. And like the first one was good, was a good one, was fun, and the second one was kind of, was less fun and not fun. Just things kind of started to go wrong. The van broke down a lot of times too.
I'm having sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
I have a weird sound thing happening.
All right.
So, can I just ask you to talk about something else for a minute? So
Sure.
I can check the
I'm trying to figure out how to talk about this all in like a just
Oh.
like a straight like in like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a form that makes sense. Like that's
No,
like
no,
it's all right.
You're doing good. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It just
totally
feels like I'm
makes
just like
sense.
meow.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's what it
Yeah.
is. You know, it's how you remember things. Because I mean, it doesn't. You know, it's a content thing rather
Yeah.
than like like chronological or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, all that's gonna happen later. I mean,
Yeah.
All that's gonna be my job. Is
Yeah.
to put this into a cohesive story where somebody
Right.
just sitting there that doesn't know anything about the story can be like, oh, this part comes,
Right.
and this part comes.
Right.
But when you remember something, you should talk about it.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're thinking about
Yeah.
and stuff.
Right.
So,
What if you mention names more?
yeah, names are good.
yeah, say Cart more, say the guys'
Mhm.
names more as much as possible.
Okay.
Good.
How's it sounding now? You having
I
a
think
sound
it's
problem?
better now.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe we'll start off with like who you guys played with, where you went on the first one, and what was good about it.
Mm.
What
All
was
right.
good or bad.
The first tour was like a big circle around the United States. So it was 6 weeks, kind of going sort of everywhere except for like the ultimate center. I don't remember really who any of the bands. It wasn't like a tour where like there was bands that toured together, and it was really low budget and like it was just like house parties and like church basements and stuff like that. It was. I don't even remember if there were any of the shows were at bars. I mean, there was the kind of the age issue of them all being 19 years old that might have made it a problem. And this is just an assumption, but I don't think that like bars having shows existed to the same degree that it does now, especially if you're just some weird like young punk band from Olympia. Like nobody cared then to like we have a special night like every Thursday night, just in the context of like what is that, like 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of a different story. So it was a lot of house, and it was a lot like, it was like calling people that were in, it was all like done by phone. It was like calling people that were in other bands that somebody knew in a town and like them kind of putting a show together, and it would just be kind of like at the youth center or their friend's basement, and we all got $5 a day to like spend on stuff. That was our, nobody had any, there was no money. It was all like put into gas. And some of the shows would be really shitty. There'd be like 4 people or something like that, would show up. And some would be really great. So it was just really hit or miss because I don't know how big of a following they had at that point at all. I think that it was more related to like a band is coming to our town and they're playing with it's like you always would want to have a local band playing with you because then they bring their friends and that's the only reason anybody's going to show up. So, and then it's like you're building this on your first tour. It's like no one knows who you are. There's no like hype or interest at all. So the first one's really hard, but it was also like really fun too because I think that there was like really minimal expectations placed on it. I mean, we're all young and maybe this like, well, we're doing this because this is what we do. I mean, what they do. I just was kind of along for the ride. And so it was more just for fun. I mean, I don't know. That's my sense of it in hindsight. Like, it was just for fun. And like, it wasn't this idea that there was any expectations that anybody was going to care. There was the hope that it would go well. And it seemed to go really well. I mean, my memory of it is it's really fun. I mean, tour is kind of really boring potentially because you're just like, you're in the van all the time. You're not really doing anything. So it's just sitting and just like, you're just like talking shit for 6 weeks, just goofing off and like, just, you know, there's not, it's just like, it's like 6 weeks of like inside jokes and like farting or something, you know, it's not really like you're off like going to the mountains or tour, like sightseeing or anything like that. But it was really fun. The thing that on that, I just remember like, they all smoked, they all like just chain smoked and I'd never smoked, but like it would be raining and the windows of the van would be rolled up and they'd just be smoking and smoking. It would be totally, that's like totally disgusting. That was one thing that was really gross. But it was fun. And I don't know if anybody came home with any money, but I think they came out I mean, they started with no money and probably came back with no money, so that's breaking even, right? That's all right, yeah. And then they went on a tour again, and I didn't go. And then the second time, and then I went a second time, which I think was their third tour, and it didn't really go. It didn't go that well. I feel like it was kind of not. It was like I call it the bad tour, the good tour and the bad tour. And it started out like the van broke down 3 times in major ways, which really like cramps your style. It broke down like just within a few days. We were stuck in Minot, North Dakota for a week or like 4 or 5 days, you know, and that's just like 3 or 4 days in to a tour. So there's no way, you start with no money, and that stretch of driving between like Seattle and Chicago, you're not going to make any money at all. So you have to just blaze through those shows and just hope for the best until you make it to big cities. And so if you had to get, I think we had to get like the radiator replaced or something in North Dakota in the winter. It's like that's not a fun way to start a tour. And then, I don't know, there was just like some sort of emotional dark cloud starting to show up over the thing. And they were just losing money. There was no money. And with the van breaking down, all the money that they'd earned would go back into that. And so it's just kind of like ended up being no fun, just like emotionally and just kind of like, I don't know, something was going wrong.
So what record are we on that?
That's with, I think that's the Suplex record.
Okay, you said
that tour.
That tour.
That tour was with the Suplex record, I think, remembering correctly.
The bad tour?
The bad tour. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty subjective, but I think it was generally understood that it was, yeah. The one after that was worse. I didn't go on that one. I mean, the tour that they went on, for the last, I don't know if the last record was actually out or not, but it was their last tour that they ever went on, that Carp ever went on. And I think they made it to, things were really bad, like, and I don't think anybody was getting along or something, I don't know. But I think they made it to like Texas or Florida or something like that. about as far away from Washington as you could possibly be in the United States. And something went wrong, and they just had to drive back. Just said, forget it, fuck it, and drove all the way back straight. I mean, Jared can probably, I wasn't there, but I just know from Jared telling me about it, and he probably relate the story better than I can, but that was kind of, that pretty much sealed the deal, and that was kind of it. And that one, I'm glad I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, he was telling me about that particular one was that it was like kind of, you know, kind of what we were talking about earlier too, about how like they didn't really have like this terminology for dealing with kind of this like unraveling situation with like, you know, different people's like, moods and things and like the way they were feeling, and also because everybody was partying, it was kind of like you couldn't just be like, you know, hey, you need to like.
Yeah, that I mean, and that was like that added like a weird. I mean, I don't know how much I want to talk about it because it's like other people's lives, you know. So I don't want to say like he was doing this and he was doing that, you know, because that's, I don't know. I don't want to misrepresent people or like, you know, talk about anyone. But it was just, there was this level of like anxiety and this sort of level of tension that was like, the band wasn't functioning as like a unit anymore. The band wasn't functioning as like this single entity that was just friends having a good time. It's like people had sort of different ideas about what they wanted to do and how they wanted to spend their time while on tour, and that just caused problems because you sort of have to be cohesive. I mean, you're out like in these weird towns, sort of by yourself. I mean, with people, you know. And you show up at these towns, and you show up and you play a show, and everybody just kind of wants to like hang out and have a good time and party, but like nobody really understands the potential that like this is also like a certain time of somebody's life, and potentially like everything's not great, you know, like you know, like maybe it's not a good idea to just like, let's always get drunk every night, you know? I mean, maybe that's okay like when you're the fan and this band shows up one time a year and you're like, oh yeah, they're here, let's have a good time. But that's just one night in this person. That's like if you had a job and you went home every night and a bunch of people were at your house and they wanted to get you drunk, you know, every night. And if you already like kind of on edge about things and your life is kind of fucked up or whatever, it's kind of like not a healthy way to exist. And then like if you see friends sort of falling apart in front of you in that situation, you know, it's a real